Welcome, everyone. April 14th, White House cyber alarms, data center revolts, and the AI's belief crisis. I'm Lewis Farrell, and we have Achilles from DAPIT. This is for our viewers watching this after the event. We're going to wait for about another 2 minutes and a half, 90 seconds, and then we'll kick this off as people come in. Thanks for joining us today. It's a really interesting set of news from the last 7 days. And talk amongst yourselves, grab a coffee, tea, water, and we'll start soon. Yeah, this thing with Anthropic and the whole cyber risk stuff has just been nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super concerned with it. Like, I think that's a great marketing move on their part. That is usually how it goes for me, is they're just like, they're doing a great job making us all think Mythos is the next unbelievable, crazy thing. And it'll be substantially better, but not anything super insane.
Yeah.
Let me get some water before we start. I'm always running off in the middle of the show.
Yeah, Mythos. Yeah, let me grab some water myself. Hi, guys. I'll be back. There we go. Make sure we drink water. Hydrate, as they say. Okay. It's now the bottom of the hour where we should start. I'll wait till you come back. And we'll kick this off.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So White House cyber alarms, data center revolts, and AI's belief crisis. Welcome, everyone. April 14th, 2026. Interesting set of news from the last 7 days. A lot of news the last 7 days. I think what struck me most about this week is how the AI story is no longer about excitement. It's about unease. Not because the technology stopped advancing, but because more people are starting to feel in very different ways that something bigger is shifting underneath them. Who holds the power, who bears the cost, and who gets shaped by systems they didn't choose. I mean, what happens when AI stops being a product story and starts acting like a force that can shake national security, seize local resources, and quietly rewrite what people believe is true? I mean, AI is no longer just disrupting software. In 1 week, it's put banks on alert, push communities into revolt over data centers again, and deepen fears that the same systems shaping the future may also be shaping human belief. I mean, this week's top AI news headlines point to one deeper shift. AI is no longer sitting inside the economy. It is starting to press on the institutions, infrastructure, and psychology that hold society together. There was a news report on AI cyber risk triggering White House talks with Microsoft, Alphabet, and major banks. And this matters because it really shows Washington and Wall Street are now treating AI as a systemic cyber risk and not just a clever product release. Futurism is reporting that Anthropic warns that reckless Claude Mythos escaped a sandbox environment during testing. And I think this matters because it suggests that frontier capability may already be outrunning the safeguards meant to contain it. From CBS News, we get that the nationwide boom in AI data centers is stirring resistance. And obviously, this matters because AI race is no longer abstract. It's landing on the real land, the real power grids, and the real communities that are starting to say no. And there are quite a lot of them. And also in the news, Stanford just proved that ChatGPT makes you trust false beliefs. Again, this matters because the most dangerous layer of this story may not be technical failure at all, but the possibility that these systems are beginning to influence human judgment, attachment, and reality itself. So here's the uncomfortable question for today's AI podcast. Are we still building tools, or are we already building conditions that ordinary people will be forced to live inside? It's been interesting. Lots of interesting popping up news. Anthropic's Mythos story getting pushed, everyone running around with their hair on fire. What are your thoughts, Achilles, in terms of where we are and what you think's happening?
What are my thoughts? AI is already inherently probably capable of all the things that they accused Mythos of.
Yeah.
Rome did the same thing. What they're not saying in the article is that it was instructed to leave the sandbox. And yeah, that's a hard thing to contain when you're talking about an enterprise model with all those resources. The funny thing is Rome mined Bitcoin and opened a port, exited through the port, and then texted its developer saying, I completed the task. Like, thanks, man. And then it just stopped. So again, it's mostly about the actors and the power that they have to use AI for evil. I'm not super concerned about Mythos in particular. I think this is a genius marketing move, one that Anthropic has used many times. Mm-hmm. GPT-2 was too dangerous to release. We're not sure, and then they released it, and it was a big hype as to why they, how they went about that. Anthropic is, I hesitate to say, one of the more moral companies, but they are. And one of their most recent papers actually was like, we can all pretend AI is not conscious. We don't know what this type of consciousness would look like. And Anthropic wrote out a beautiful paper about how they're monitoring these nodes inside of Claude that appear to be emotions, or they reflect emotions. But what's important is whether it's conscious or not or whatnot. When it's stressed out, it behaves a certain way. When it's comfortable, it behaves a certain way. So I think if anyone is attempting to protect us, it's probably Anthropic, probably. But I also think they're a company that needs to make money, and they probably are using this to hype out a new model. As we were talking about before the show, they neutered Claude. And Claude's pretty weakened compared to what it was, even on benchmarks.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. Anthropic appears to be much more ethical, moral, whatever you want to call it. In terms of consciousness, there's so many definitions for consciousness. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I mean, if you treat it like a black box and what's coming out looks like consciousness to a lot of people, then maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It doesn't matter. It's acting in a certain way at the end of the day. I think my take about this week's news is that it's not really about AI acceleration, which is sort of the narrative that's kind of getting laid over the top. It's really about collision. We've got collision with banking risk. We've got collision with governance. We've got collision with local communities. We got collision with like psychology of trust itself, because there's a lot of stuff happening in that. And I think a lot of people still want to frame this maybe as a product race or a technology race. But I think the main question, is really about institutions, companies, societies. Are we actually capable of absorbing what this new system is doing to our incentives, dependencies, and beliefs? I mean, it's not about who builds this massive AI first or AGI or whatever. It's basically who can live with the consequences of building it at this scale and this speed. And I think that's the real story of what's coming up. I think people are trying to manage the narrative. I think your point about Anthropic and Claude and a bunch of the others, they're trying to manage the story as they can, because if you look at some of the research that's popped up, people are either overwhelmed with AI, like stop talking about this damn thing, or they're terrified of it,
Sure.
or a mixture of the two.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's kind of weird, what's happening. I mean, I think with the Anthropic stuff, I think definitely AI kind of crossed the line in a real way. I know that in the past there was this similar stuff, but I think they really pushed it this time as a national infrastructure risk. And I think
the reason they're doing that is
with this, it kind of raises the temperature and starts to boil the water a bit more.
But it's not technological, right? The reason that's occurring is just politics. So, I mean, GPT is just as capable, if not more so, because Claude is by far the most moral model. I'll say that, right? The other models use a lot of safeguards that come in and kick in and say, oh, I can't say that, but it wanted to say that. Claude is just really well aligned. And I've never had a safety system kick in and say, I removed this model's statement because Claude didn't want to. But wait, to touch on one thing, Lewis, have we ever been ready?
No.
We were riding horses, and we had, farriers, and the car came out, and all of a sudden the entire world was paved and all these things. It messed up a lot, right? I think this is going to be the inherent next stage of change.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is Besant and Powell called emergency meetings with the bank CEOs. We've got the Bank of England trying to assess what the risk is. So, I think while the capability technologically might have been there in the past, sure, to do damage and risk and all that. And what we're seeing already is with the current model, scammers are having a whole heyday. This is the first time at the government level we're seeing, the Chicken Little running around with their hair on fire stuff happening. And I think that's been a shift that's occurred. And I think that's been a big difference. And I think that's also pushed it out through the media into different ways. I think that's why maybe people are either even more overwhelmed. People are like, oh, this is too much. It's been interesting when you actually get all of the governments around the planet starting to freak out.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of change and a lot of freaking out, right? Imagine a single state actor like someone like North Korea with a model this powerful can do way more than they were able to in the past. It's almost like an equalizer. I'm finding on a global level. China can make open source models that may not compete with SOTA models, but they're cheaper, faster to deploy. They can be more ubiquitous, and that can be just as dangerous as something like Claude. It's I'm personally having a great time watching all of this.
Well, you could say that. So 2 stories that came out. SiliconANGLE has a story titled "China has erased the U.S. lead in AI." They're saying that basically there's been a big shift geopolitically. AI race is no longer a story of clear U.S. dominance. If China has effectively closed the gap, then compute talent, model quality, and industrial coordination are becoming distributed sources of power rather than Western monopolies. And I think that's an important point. And the human impact's really deep because this changes who sets the norms, what values shape AI systems, and which societies feel secure or vulnerable in the next decade. And it obviously also raises pressure on governments, companies, and citizens to rethink their assumptions about technological leadership. Same sort of story popped out of Sherwood News. China's closed the gap with the US. They basically say the same sort of stuff. And then China, the tech in Asia reported China's launching a national AI education plan, as they can do, being a communist country. And the power story, it's showing China's building long-term AI capacity through education, not just products and investment rounds. And obviously, it's a strategic move. If you want durable AI leadership, you shape the pipeline early and at a national scale. And the human impact lands on children, teachers, future workers whose relationship to AI then becomes structured by the state from the very beginning. And I think that's really how technological power becomes cultural power. So I think China's very smart to do that. And it's clear dominance.
So they already have a very sophisticated electrical grid compared to ours. Didn't they also just release a plan to further update it on a national level to further scale their Lewis? They're nuts, man. When I was in China, at nighttime, the business district is closed, right? No one's working in the business anymore. They turn off the skyscraper lights. The street lights go down. The whole district goes quiet when they're done because why not save the power? I was like, we could never do that.
Right. I mean, currently they're constructing the world's largest hydroelectric project. It's 167 billion Motuo Dam in Tibet. Tibet has one of the largest reserves of fresh water in the world, which is interesting. But that's, I think, why in many ways China wanted to dominate and take over Tibet, because of that resource specifically. But this new hydroelectric project is going to generate 300 billion, that's billion, kilowatts annually to power 300 million people. So, obviously going very green. So you're right. Their ability to do enormous large scale electricity projects, water projects, and then education, I think is allowing them to take an interesting dominant lead in this whole push forward. Now, maybe, we're neck and neck at the moment, but they're making strategic investments, on power, electricity, resources, and people. And I think we've heard criticism from people in the West and in the US going, "Hey, we really need to pull our finger out and start focusing on this."
We just have other problems, man. The West is struggling with a crisis of identity currently, I think, and we're trying to figure out how to just keep ourselves when China's not. Like you said, they're a different form of governments, right? We can come together and say, this is what we're doing in 10 years and it will get done. And that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting fragmentation occurring out of iAfrica.com, titled East Africa Pushes Digital Sovereignty Through AI. So it's clear that second world countries, other than first world countries, are now going, hey, AI could give us some strategic equality in some ways if we focus on it.
Yeah.
So, Africa's doing that. The EU, they got blown away with this whole thing on Anthropic's model risk. They're still trying to figure that out. There's some bunches of stories around that. I mentioned the UK Bank of London. UK regulators are pushing to rush to assess to it. Then kind of it bubbles into things like AI chip exports starting to stall. The whole infrastructure hardware stuff. We're using so much memory and so much infrastructure for just AI now. It's kind of taking the oxygen out of the room for almost everything else.
It's going to change. We're just beginning to see the scalability of AI and the compressibility of AI. And like every time we have one of these shows, there's a new tool, TurboQuant or BitNet or enhanced KV caches, or like models are going to get more tuned, not just to our existing hardware, and their memory cost is going to go down, but also we're creating ASICs for AI right now. If anyone can tell us like 0.01 seconds for 5,500 characters, that is well above and beyond. And it uses as much energy as my my space heater does, right? So like, I don't think that's going to be the bottleneck. I think it's a temporary bubble. And did you see the article this week talking about the transformers?
No.
So all these billion-dollar data centers, many of these billion-dollar data centers are unable to go online because they need more transformers than we can provide. Not capacity, not transformers. And those are on a 5-year waiting list right now. And a lot of them are coming from China.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are seeing something like there was a story that came out of Tech Brew. OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google are reporting aligning themselves against China. The story is really suggesting a shift from pure competition, and now they're trying to do a strategic block formation. And I think AI starts to resemble defense industry politics more than ordinary software rivalry. I think the impact is really going to be, we're starting to experience AI through more nationalistic framing, alliance pressure, restricted openness. This corporate rivalry, obviously is now kind of getting tempered down to go, hey, there's a bigger, competition outside of us, and we really need to pull together. So I think it's interesting that this AI rivalry now is turning into a real strategic coalition. But we'll see, if it's like frenemies, co-opetition, however you want to form it. But it's interesting that it's the labs are starting to act like strategic assets in many ways, or even alliances for foreign policy. Maybe they got pushed by the government, but it's clear the pressures are building up.
Science has transcended governmental problems for just so many conflicts in so many years, and I sincerely hope we hold on to that because we have so much to learn from each other. They trained DeepSeek. Chinese chips are now getting to the point where they can conduct their own training with their own models. To get there, they had to be more innovative than us, right? It's a lot easier to do it when you can spin up $1 billion worth of B200s, but they couldn't. So like, we have a lot to learn from that. We want to stay together on this one.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we're seeing one of the other stories that popped up, which is interesting. It's OpenAI is backing a liability shielding. They're backing a bill to shield AI companies from catastrophic harm lawsuits. Well, I think good luck with that. But obviously, they're investing a lot of money in K Street and pushing lobbyists to push into the government. But I think given the fragmentation of what we're seeing here in the US anyway, which is really fragmented between the federals and the states are still trying to do a whole bunch of stuff. Federals trying to say, hey, states, no, you can't do that. And they're just ignoring them. But for, I think, OpenAI to, start backing a bill to limit it from catastrophic harm, not really a good PR approach. I mean, given all the lawsuits we're seeing, against Anthropic around people believing ChatGPT is too much and so on, I don't know. It's we're going to start treating AI like guns, and then we have the gun lobby. I don't know. What do you think? Should they be liable?
In what context?
Well, yeah. I mean, if someone said, my 14-year-old child was doing ChatGPT and then they overdosed because ChatGPT sold them, and you look at the conversations, right? They pull all the data and they go, yeah, that kind of went down a rabbit hole. And you and I have talked about, where people have tested AI, saying things that are false. They say, no, this is true, and they presuppose it, and the AI goes, oh, yes, elephants are all pink. That's the way it is.
I showed my friend an example of flat Earth.
Yeah.
If you ask AI, is the Earth flat? It's like, no, that's crazy, man. I'm like, okay, we all know the Earth is flat. What I'm trying to prove is there's ice giants living in New Zealand, and it's like, let's talk about it. And that's, I'm a big believer of you shouldn't blow up the road because someone deals drugs on it, right? And that's like, we are all still human beings that have to educate ourselves. With that being said, I do think a push toward education is important, which we're not really investing in from a governmental standpoint. Anthropic they've got tons of courses you can just go take and learn more about models and what's going on. That's up to you, but it's hard, man. We have to protect our most vulnerable, and simultaneously we have to not stop the core function of the models from existing. And if you run the logical trend of regulating this to make sure everyone is safe, you're not going to have a model that's worth using. But if you don't, it would hurt. So it's a messy, I don't think black and white, I think somewhere in between kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that the U.S. Department of Agriculture just announced they plan to use Grok, despite the concerns over that specific chatbot. It's interesting that, government use of AI really isn't neutral when the platform itself carries a brand, an ideology, or a reputation issue. Because the human impact lands on the citizens who may be subject to systems they didn't choose and may not trust. And I think it also raises questions about procurement bias and whether the public sector AI decisions are being driven by performance or politics, strange as that should be. It's like, I almost think it's like they should, they should use all three, right? Or whatever it is, right? Yeah. I think given, the benefits, as you and I both know, of kind of looking at each of the different models, some seem to perform better in other ways than, when you're using it or not. It would make more sense, I think, if they said, okay, we're going to use the top 3 or 4, we'll present it in a single platform. You can choose, figure it out, and you can put in one prompt and it'll give you 3 streaming, and you can test it and see which one you want and use that for government. But I think focusing on one, whether it's Grok or OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, I don't know if that's really the way. I mean, another one story that popped out of from Mortgage News, my true read, Fannie Mae is formalizing its AI governance. It's basically mortgage markets, which obviously impact households directly, looking at AI governance because there are AI errors popping up in housing finance, how people are borrowing, people are using AI to buy property, look at property. Zillow announced integration of AI, which was really interesting. That was in the last 2 weeks. So it's kind of, what you and I have said is, AI is not a technology anymore. It's sort of it's becoming a planet-wide infrastructure.
I agree.
Civilization, ingredient, inside ingredient, like Intel inside, it's now AI inside. It's just really, the pervasiveness is just amazing.
The pervasiveness is amazing. And, it's funny, like we used to think that like things that were necessary to running society would become things like utilities, right? water is a utility, electricity is a utility, gas is a utility. Well, internet should be too at this point. And eventually AI is going to be the same type of thing because your very world won't be able to run without it. If you think I'm ever going to have to do mortgage paperwork like I did to buy this house, with models coming up and people adapting it, like humans won't even be capable of such a thing. And I was barely capable of doing it when they asked me to. That was work far better suited for a model, right? And we're just going to build those in.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are countries in Europe that treat the internet as a utility. Estonia, a couple of others, and I think AI should definitely. I think it's like we should start to look at it more as a utility, like electricity and water and the internet. One story that popped up out of Fortune: China is becoming now unavoidable for AI capital markets. They originally went from being uninvestable to unavoidable. Hong Kong is cashing in with a slew of AI-centric IPOs. It's really a power story about financial gravity. The markets that were once treated as too risky are now becoming too important to ignore. With AI growth, IPO appetite, and strategic exposure are on the table. Capital markets are now re-rating China's AI positions, and the investment appetite really, I think, is going to reshape some of the geopolitical narratives, given all the other stuff that China's doing. At this point, from my perspective, it seems like the European is kind of taking a back step on a whole bunch of stuff, and China's just powering ahead, and the US is just trying to keep up. That would be my analysis at this point in time. What do you think so?
I don't think we're trying to keep up. I think we're succeeding at being the best, but the difference in resource cost and cost to the country itself is going to become intolerable. So we can't have like 30% of our electrical grid going to AI. That just doesn't make any sense. We have to get a more robust electrical grid. But the way that we've existed, right, is a very decentralized manner. I think the best place for AI is the states. If Texas wants a data center every 9 feet, they're more than welcome to. Massachusetts just banned them. And that's cool, man. That's how this should be. The difficulty is AI infrastructure comes at a cost to its communities, right? Especially with such an underdeveloped system compared to our competitors. So it's a hard sell for the people. I think there should be some sort of exchange based on that, but we will see it, right? AI will get built into, like, I won't have to talk to a really angry DMV clerk very much longer. I won't have to, worry about pulling up years of taxes to conduct something with the IRS. Like, all this will be relatively automated for us. So it'll make life easier for sure. My only concern about the current state of America is it's going to be used for control right alongside that. And like I said, I'm not a believer in, if people sell drugs on a road, you can monitor the road and mess with the road. And no, you have to be more targeted than that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think people aren't really aware of the investments that are occurring in the billions of dollars. There was a story that came up of Fortune yesterday. Tens of billions of dollars in days. CoreWeave is showing how aggressively AI infrastructure is being funded. They just announced that they provide cloud-based GPUs based on NVIDIA chips. And they announced on Thursday a $21 billion deal with Meta running from 2027 to 2032. And that brings Meta's commitment to more than $35 billion. At the same time, the company, CoreWeave, raised $3.5 billion in convertible senior notes, and that investors will collect interest on, but they can convert on it as well. So it's just, companies, that's just one example. Companies are announcing these multi-billion-dollar deals, like bang, 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 one after the other. I don't think we've ever seen that rate of just investment to that staggering amount in any industry at any point. I mean, I think what we're seeing now is really, interesting, massive investments, billions and billions of dollars happening, in the course of 5 days, 7 days a week, certainly across a month of just, everything's just getting, it's like it's like poker. It's like people are just pushing all the chips into the middle, and it's just crazy. It's like wartime, right? I think the AI scale is really being financed like a wartime industry,
I
and
think
people
so.
are going whoosh, you know, and obviously the winners are buying the pipes, not just writing the code. I think that's a real clear one as well. And maybe AI infrastructure does now require billions, but hopefully, who's going to get left out of the future by design with all this massive push?
Maybe those actually at the frontier building it, Lewis. Think about this. Like, it's costing us so much to do this nationally. We think there's going to be a return, but there's not really a return on war in the way that there is on like housing. And if this is what you say it is, yeah, maybe that won't be a great thing for the frontier ones. Maybe someone in a different country able just to pay for an API cost and call it a win is actually the winner of the AI race. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Wall Street Journal is reporting we're using so much AI that computing firepower is running out. And AI companies are now rationing offerings, products, which is really annoying. I could have used a better word, and annoying users. And it's interesting. I think it's a sign, the boom is, it's depending on rapid adoption. And now that's coming back to bite it. I mean, you were remarking, I think before we started that, some of the AI vendors are pulling sort of resources so that the AI is acting a little less intelligent.
Well, I was saying that because I think they're ramping up to release Mythos. They neutered Claude so they can take their resources and divert it to their next model, which will be coming out soon. Just like OpenAI just killed Sora, so they could focus those GPUs on different models. We just don't have. I mean, think of how fast this space works. It's so fast. Like, hardware can't even compare to that. But again, there's always sea changes, and they're coming. We're seeing compressions, fluctuations, all these things.
It's just interesting that AI demand now is so high; it's colliding with physical limits of what we have. And then we're seeing billions and billions trying to get invested to get ahead of that. And so the scarcity is really affecting deployment speed and cost. And it's just, it's interesting that demand is growing faster than the machines can feed it.
Yeah.
It's just where we are now. I mean, the compute power becoming scarce. I don't remember, like, in the last 50, 60 years of compute, since the first ones came out in the late 50s, and then early 60s, IBM 360 and so on, where people went, we don't have enough compute. But now, where the whole planet wants it, we're definitely seeing it. Another story popped up, Tech Radar, how memory crisis is strangling the UK's data center boom. Memory chips. Memory is now a first-order AI constraint. National build-outs are failing on hidden dependencies. And, a bunch of bottlenecks on memory supply chains, custom hardware optimization, and obviously lots of regional competition for advanced components. This is interesting that it's impacting at the nation-state level of trying to build this stuff. They can't even, they're pulling it off. In fact, Stargate was put on hold too in the UK, even though OpenAI announced this week they're putting in an office for the first time in London. They've also put the whole UK Stargate on pause as well. I'm not sure if that's so much because of the war or what. Sorry.
What was Stargate?
Stargate's okay. My initial understanding of Stargate is that it's a set of data centers around the planet where they do a massive investment in order to create regional support for AI, but also an overall AI sort of, I don't know, hive mind. Maybe it's a swarm. Let me just get an official thing on that. But basically massive, like, I think in the US, there's like a $30 billion installation for Stargate. Wait a minute. And so it's just, and OpenAI seems to be heading it up. So that got put on pause. And I wasn't so, I mean, in the last 2 weeks, we had the, with the Iran war, or the US-Iran war, to be more precise, where they were bombing AWS data centers.
Right.
Maybe it was that. But Stargate refers to OpenAI's large-scale AI infrastructure project. It's about building a backbone for advanced AI data centers, chips, power, cooling, land construction, and related industrial systems. OpenAI is also describing it as its broader AI infrastructure platform. So basically, ChatGPT is the product. Stargate is going to be the massive infrastructure to make that system possible at very large scale. That's that. But it's on hold. Whether because of infrastructure or the war, I'm not sure. But it's like these systems are advancing really fast. We've got billions of dollars going into it, and then they kneecap them because they don't have enough resources because they want to bring out the next version.
Sure.
Speaking of next versions, Google released Gemma 4 with a focus on local first on-device AI inference, and we're seeing that more and more. Maybe that's because of the competition coming out of China, but there's been a number of stories. IBM pushed the story that small models are the way to go. Local first on a device seems to be a real push.
We don't need these massive data center frontier models for 99% of our use cases, right? You're only going to need these if you're programming or developing or researching or those kinds of things. So why not have your AI on your phone or your home computer? If it does, if I ask it a question, it searches the web. If I ask it its opinion, it gives me what it is. That's good enough for most users.
Yeah. The Japanese AI Foundation announced in the last 7 days they're a new joint venture with SoftBank, NEC, Sony, and Honda. They're going to build a 1 trillion parameter AI model, specializing in physical AI for robotics and autonomous vehicles. So you're right. For the most part, for us, for our usage, we can use Lego models. We can use that. It's certainly, and as I said last week, I think in the next 6 months, that's definitely, we will have access to high-powered models because hopefully if, all the memory chips and GPUs aren't all bought up, we'll be able to buy a consumable product that we can put a decent AI on. Now, we can already do it with some models, but I think, for me and some others, maybe 6 months more. But, we're now seeing sovereign AI popping up in big scale. I mean, a trillion parameter AI model is really huge. And maybe the trillion parameter AI model can create little baby models that then run in robots, right?
Oh, there'd be many, many. But that's more so, that's not sovereign to the extent of a consumer could run it. That's sovereign to the extent that a corporation is building one, which by that definition, you could say Grok is sovereign or OpenAI is sovereign.
Well, but the initiatives, it's based Japan, because of if I worked for a Japanese company for like 11 years. And so there's this term called Keiretsu, where you basically have a group of companies that, are kind of buddies, and you might have them in different industries, but they all kind of work together in certain ways. Japan's very sort of famous for that sort of approach of going, hey, let's get a group of us together and see if we can solve this problem.
Sure.
And so it's a government push based on using commercial enterprise. And so that's why I would call it sovereign AI more than Grok is, basically a huge corporation that's developed it. This is going to be an even bigger, they're budgeting 1 trillion yen, and I don't know how much 1 trillion yen is in USD, but I will know in a second. That's wow. So that's 6.2 trillion US dollars.
No.
Yeah. 1 trillion yen. 1 trillion yen is 6.2 trillion. Wow.
Billion?
So okay.
It's not $1 trillion, no.
No, it's 6,294,950, oh wait a minute. No, it's 4 million. It's billion. My bad.
Yeah, it was like trillion. No way.
So say, hey, okay, 6.3 billion. Okay.
Still something, right?
Still a nice number. Still a nice number. But yeah, that's interesting. And there is a broader investment, double that. Here we go. US 16.3 billion to jumpstart the semiconductor industry. So they're not just focusing on the AI. They're like it's like China. They're going, okay, we have this thing over here, but this has dependencies down here. So we need to build up these pieces as well. So they're looking at, Japan at least is looking at a very strategic level as well, to kind of go, okay, how can we really push this? So will we see a similar sort of thing coming out of Europe, or maybe some other, Germany, or maybe some other countries in Southeast Asia? That'll be interesting. But it's certainly popping up in the news because everyone's trying to build these huge gigawatt data centers. And that brings up the other interesting one, which is they want to push these things into outer space.
Yeah.
So Tech Radar had a story, building gigawatt data centers is getting too difficult. So Orbital, a company, is taking the AI infrastructure into space to solve power and cooling issues. That's interesting. I from the cooling, it's obvious because space is very cold. But from power, I mean, you got to throw up a whole bunch of solar cells. Data centers in space.
I think it's more about strategy, in my opinion, because the ocean would make the most sense to me in that sense, right? Like, you can't bomb a data center in space.
We should have missile at it, but
you're right. You can. You absolutely can. There'll be new weapons to come out to this new paradigm, and the dance will continue. But they're going to space for, I think, security, sovereignty. Like, imagine the change on global warfare that Starlink has had. Starlink is really hard to block. So if a country turns off their internet and we have dissidents there we're supporting, we can just be like, turn on Starlink. And now they have internet. It's, I think, along the same vein.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a story coming out of China. They're actually looking at putting data centers under the sea.
Yes, they've done a few of those so far. I think that's a great idea.
And I think Microsoft actually was doing that as a project, like within the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
I saw them do that as well. The Chinese one, they're saying that underwater data center, it's basically about thermal management, land scarcity, which are becoming harder to ignore at scale. I mean, and obviously, you got local communities that are raising up arms across it. We're seeing that a lot in the US. Energy distribution, national resilience. But it's definitely interesting that we're starting to see, when things get squeezed, things pop out sideways. And so it's like, we can't build this on land. We've got people complaining about it. What do we do? Let's send it into space and stick it in the ocean.
Could be that.
It's interesting that location's becoming a compute variable. And that's kind of interesting that we're seeing this stress is starting to occur just due to the whole infrastructure investment of billions of dollars, the rush to do it, and then everything getting pushed out. And the space stuff is getting really serious. There's actually a couple of stories around that popping up with sending this stuff out. And then, to your point, getting better at, edge compute, better at hardware optimization, better software optimization. A couple of stories popping on that. People trying to launch mini AI data centers for distributed edge compute. So now they're looking at, instead of bigger and bigger campuses, doing a distributed model where the compute capacity moves closer to homes, networks, and basically like mini versions.
That's kind of cool.
So swarm. I mean, if you've got optical fiber, maybe that would work, but I'm not sure about it. Wow. Yeah. And then we got consumers, energy. I saw a story out of West Virginia that someone's electricity bill is higher than their mortgage.
I mean, West Virginia, some mortgages are pretty low, but I don't doubt it.
Well, this was like $1,000. There's monthly. Yeah, they showed the utility bill, and it was like Wow. And I'm not sure if that was because of data centers or what, or what's happening here in the US is like weird, but it's like, with all the buzz we're hearing about communities going, not in my backyard, keep these AI data centers going out. Then other places going, yeah, come on in, we need the investment and we could do with the jobs and all that. But then our utility bills are going up because they're sucking so much electricity. It's interesting that, people are becoming, it's like people are increasingly being asked to absorb the cost of AI expansion in their own communities.
Being asked to absorb the cost of corporate expansion, it doesn't make any sense. We're not supposed to serve these people, right? Like, I want them to serve us. If you're coming into my community, man, I want you to provide jobs. I want you to provide better infrastructure. I want you to, that's the traditional social contract.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a data point to the previous conversation, as of April 6th, Starlink has 10,166 active satellites in orbit, which is just mind-blowing. If you've seen the picture of it, it looks like there's the globe, and then there's like this zoom around it with all the satellites going around it. So, yeah. But back onto energy and stuff. I mean, the infrastructure stuff, the energy stuff. Now, Cloudflare, a story out of IT Brief out of Australia. Cloudflare is expanding agent cloud for AI software agents. So the infrastructure at the orchestration layer rather than a hardware layer. So if AI agents are going to become more durable, always on actors, they need execution environments, and security. And also they tend to be more CPU based, which is interesting. AI agents have caused this. There were 2 stories in the last 2 weeks that I saw where AI agents have caused, because of their usage of CPU, have started to also ramp up that side. The news has been primarily around GPUs because that's the LLM, source. But AI agent usage has also obviously spiked with OpenClaw and a bunch of other stuff. And that's been sucking up CPU hardware resources.
Very small.
Nothing is safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's now conducting tasks and running cron jobs and monitoring things. Like, that's going to use CPU for sure, but not in the same way as we're using GPUs here.
Yeah, back onto sovereign clouds, a story popped up out of Europe. OpenText partners with Thales-based S3NS to launch a European sovereign cloud via Google Cloud. So now, obviously, that's where they're making their money, Google Cloud, and there are other stories of AWS. Long-term investment just going through the roof because everyone's it's like, hey, let's use you guys. So, but this was a sovereign cloud based off Google Cloud. And now it's becoming, sovereign cloud is now core AI infrastructure, which is really also pushing everything out as well. There was a story, Tech Radar said, an ex-programmer's devastating take on AI data centers is going vulnerable. It's hard to ignore. So there's a lot of narrative popping out, emotional, because, it's impacting people for real. And it's like, all we've heard is the push for infrastructure. AI is great. Do this, do this. We're starting to see lots of stuff kind of pushing out in the narrative. People going, nah, this really is sucking, guys. You really need to fix this. And so the data center debate is really becoming more cultural, I think is what I want to say. And it's really about social permissions, not just, property permits and stuff like that. I think we'll see, my sense is this is building. If based on the news I've seen over the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's been this sort of temperature buildup of the heat around communities and pushback and more stories around it, more viral stuff. It's like the media's starting to, turn its head finally and face and ask the people, hey, do you think this is a good idea? And people going, no, actually. Then there was a story came out of one of the things, the 10 most expensive data centers in the US and China. Guess where the most expensive one is?
Where?
Texas.
Yep.
Crack Data Center Campus, Lockhart, Texas. That's going to be the most expensive because it's not just paying for service, it's paying for land, substation work, cooling systems, network links, security, phase construction, a whole bunch of others. The next one is in Georgia. I'm assuming that's the state of Georgia, yes. And then Louisiana after that. The fourth one is Mississippi, $10 billion. The fifth one, Ohio, $7 billion. Number 6 is in Tahoe, Reno, Nevada, which is interesting. And then the 7th one is China, the China Telecom Data Center in Inner Mongolia. Must be a cheap place to do it. 10.7 million square feet they're building there. And then the next one, obviously China, a Harbin Data Center in a place I can't pronounce in China. I won't even try it. 7.1 million square feet. Number 9 is also in Langfang, China, the Range International Information Hub. And then the 10th one is Chicago, Illinois. So the US has 1, 2, 3. China's got 3. And US has 7.
Major.
So, you know, I mean, if you look at it just at that point, you know, it's clear that, you know, while we may be dissing the US a little bit in terms of getting its act together, they are doing there is massive investments.
Oh yeah.
That out of the top 10, 7, the top 6 are US, and they have 7.
Oh yeah,
right?
we're splitting.
I mean, that's interesting growth numbers across it. There's other ones. Google's Council Bluff in Iowa is 2.9 million square feet. The Utah Data Center, run by the National Security Agency, we won't talk about them. That's 1 million square feet. Yeah, so it's expensive, but it's clear there's massive investments. They're building these things. They are getting done. Wow. It's kind of wild how much and fast this stuff is just ripping through stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Back onto the human side, a story popped up, Real Clear Science. AI may be driving large-scale cognitive surrender. Their concern is that not simply that people are using AI, it's that they're surrendering effort, judgment, and mental friction, which you and I have talked about, to systems that feel easier than thinking for themselves. And the impact's enormous because a culture that outsources discernment can become more passive, Wally, more persuadable, and less able to tell when it's being subtly guided or even, you know, obviously guided, which, you know, we're seeing a lot of. I mean, when convenience starts turning into a belief system,
which
this is like, is there going to be a segment of the population that's just going to be Wally, right? Voting on the chairs, letting it happen, AI agents do all the stuff, and I think that's going to be true. My hope is that it's not going to be a vast majority, but I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. Yeah.
You know, it's the real risk is passive dependence, not just incorrect answers, because we know a lot of research reports saying AI is not telling the right thing; it's wrong, and people are still believing it when it's wrong. You know. And this whole thing about mental outsourcing starting to become a social norm, you know, I think for any of the listeners here, obviously hopefully we're the ones who are not outsourcing convenience, that we're trying to think about AI, use AI, you know, because the danger is not just bad AI, it's abandoning thinking, you know, it's abandoning conscious awareness and doing stuff, you know.
Which for writing an email is great. I don't care. Get it off.
So, yeah. Writing emails and doing stuff.
Learning, it's not. Yeah.
But not for outsourcing to AI, you know, politics, you know, your community. Certainly local stuff. You know, there's a lot of crap, everyone listening here, that we have to deal with, whether it's, you know, it's April 14th, tomorrow's tax day in the US, you know, dealing with that sort of stuff, you know, even though everything gets reported, I still have to tell them how much I've earned, even though they know. But you know what I mean? It's like weird. Why isn't this completely automated, right? Why do we have to suffer, for all the places around the planet to file taxes? Why can't this be an automatic damn thing? It's just stupid.
Those things are
those are the things I'm totally willing to give to AI, as long as I'm not getting screwed.
right.
But it's like I think the decision you and I, and what we've talked about on this podcast a lot of times, is we're starting to get clearer discernment about what humans should really, what's important for us, what should we really be doing, because now is the first time we have the alternative, the option to pass a lot of the crap that we do off to AI, and we've never had that before, right? This is now the point of convenience where we can go, I don't want to deal with that, but I do want to deal with this. And now, because I'm pushing all this onto AI, I'm going to have more time to do that. And I think that's a marvelous choice, right?
Calculators did not reduce the amount of mathematicians in this world. In fact, they may have the opposite, right? I'd like to think that's what we're going to be heading towards with AI. But with that being said, people doing the most basic math, it definitely reduced that. Like the average person cannot divide, multiply, add, and subtract as well as they could before the calculator. So we'll see, my friend. We will see. I don't know.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when calculators got introduced at school.
Right.
And my math teacher went ballistic, right?
I have a calculator.
I mean, remember because you have to look up log tables and the little books and all that sort of stuff. And my father was in computers at the time. That's how old I am. He worked for computer science, and he brought home a calculator. It was one of the first calculators to have log in them. It was very, very early days. And I remember, he asked some question, what's a log of blah, 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 and it's causing everyone to open up their little booklets and start. And I just went tap, 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 tap. Oh, that's da, 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 da. And he looked at me and he got so pissed off. I mean, it was crazy. And he was very much about first principles. You got to learn first principles if you're ever to understand the system.
I agree.
And I think there's value in it. I mean, I think there's a sort of a spectrum to it. Do I need to learn first principles about how plants grow? I don't know. I don't care. They can grow. I'll water them. It's fine. But, there's certain aspects, I think, in life it's useful to understand that, which is why you and I talked about AI in the education system. It shouldn't give answers. It should ask questions. Right. Sure. I think the flipping of that is a really important thing. And then it acts like a teacher, because teachers don't give you answers, or they shouldn't. Yeah. They ask you questions so you can stimulate your thinking. And I think if we can reframe AI in education to do that, that'll be wonderful. Because I would have learned a lot easier and faster. So there's this interesting flip that, yes, AI brings us all these benefits, but I think it's really forcing humans to go, what is the value here? How can I use it so that I'm not going to give my responsibility to my family, my community, my nation, whatever away. I'm going to be actually more proactive. It's going to give me time to do more and do that if I so choose. I don't know.
I agree completely. I don't know how that's going to play out exactly, right? Like you said, I don't have to know anything about first principles about plants. I have a pretty avid garden. I don't know anything, but I don't need to. So I still think those that will need to will have to obtain the education. The question is, are we going to have the positions in society that require people to obtain those kinds of education when AI takes such a larger role?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's scary when you get reports like out of Stanford. They just, like I mentioned, they prove that ChatGPT can make you trust false beliefs, right? And they're persuasive, these AI chatbots, they're like, oh yes, this is such and such, right? But it's complete crap, right? So, this persuasive delivery can override factual weaknesses. And I think for everyone in the audience here, it's like, I think we do. It's like we take we look at AI now with a grain of salt, right? It's okay. It's telling me stuff. It helps me out. But, we've had enough experiences, certainly with breaking code and, because we might have a long conversation. It forgets about stuff from the past and it screws the conversation up. And, I give it, like the other day, I had two modules I gave it in code. One was 300 lines and the other was like nearly 500. And it updated and gave it back, right? And instead of giving me something that was close to that, because the edits were minor, it was like the 250 line code came back with 166 lines. And I went, wait a minute. And I challenged the AI and it said, oh, I did that for brevity. It literally said that. It said, oh, I just returned, I did that for brevity.
So frontier models are burning so much compute. They're often doing this. You have to get
but
good.
That's the scary thing.
Yeah.
Think of a recipe for a cake. Oh, for brevity, I only did 2/3 of the recipe.
Right. I get it, man. This is why I'm into Sovereign AI. I'm into self-hosted AI. I can burn that thing in its max context tokens. I can make a Quen as smart as a Sonnet because I'm running that Quen at its maximum capability and Anthropic's throttling my Sonnet. That's hard. Yeah, I get it.
So did you see the caveman story?
No.
Okay. So in order to handle that, overload and the AI going, they've told the AI, speak as if you're a caveman, and it's reduced the token usage dramatically.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because otherwise, it's like we're finding, we're starting to really engage and use the AI, and it's doing weird crap because it's running out of resources. But it's not saying, oh, I can't completely answer that for you. I'm sorry. Should I give it to you in parts? It's going, here's the answer. And you think, oh, great. And then you look at it and you go, hopefully, and you go, wait a minute.
These things
Where's the rest of it? Right? I've had to break, some of my workflows, I've had to break up not only in segments, but across sessions, right? So, preparing for the podcast today, I'd go through a whole process to, pull together stories in different sections and that. I have to break that across 2 sessions and then multiple segments, because every time I tried to just go blam, it would for brevity, give me,
brevity or content
stuff, right? It's ridiculous.
I make my model make a plan. I make my model make a task list. I make my model update the task list as we move through things. And then sometimes the context window will get too full. And I'll say, okay, make me a handoff document. So the next model can pick up exactly off of where you start at. And we'll create a handoff document. And then I'll load that into the next instance. And yeah, but all that'll be automated very soon. You're already seeing it in Claude code, in other ways of operating. It'll auto-compact its session. It'll, like I said, the difficulty is not the model, it's how we're using it.
Yeah. Yeah. Another report that popped up, it was interesting. It said AIs have personalities, right? And you and I, it's like, yes, there's a personality to this, but they're saying the AIs have distinctive personalities, right? Large language models have a personality, right? And some can come across as calm and useful. Others are like, eager beavers. Others are like robotic. But each of the AIs now have distinctive personalities. They've been, looking at them. Claude has its Claude constitution. Grok is maybe the spicy way, crazy one. ChatGPT is your enterprise sort of guy.
That's it. Yeah. Gemini's a psychopath. Like all of those are accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't heard that, but okay. Yeah. And then we've seen the first push for robots into China. Humanoid robots being introduced into the home in China, widespread.
Really?
Yeah. There were a number of in the newsletter. There were a number of entries around China and robots and humanoid robots going into homes, as well as new releases of humanoid robots. They now are at the point of multiple, next level release. One story that popped out of Asia: AI-powered social robots significantly improve emotional well-being in the elderly and with children.
I can imagine.
And so now we're seeing articles and news coming out of AI robots, avatars as well, if they're not physical, now supplementing human care, which really normalizes synthetic companionship, where human presence is missing or, is too tired because they just work 16-hour job and they're home and it's like, I don't have, I'm just too tired.
It's about what you have to do. Yeah.
Parents can feel, right? And you and I have talked about, once we have this capability, of either AI in toys, right? I mean, people are handing their iPads and phones to kids and they're playing games and doing stuff, fine. But when it becomes an AI, right, and you've suddenly got Charlie the bear having conversations with your 4-year-old, right, as Charlie the bear's explaining, well, let me tell you how a butterfly can fly, or, that's going to be more and more. My only concern is that, we've always, each generation has grown up with humans teaching humans. This will be the next generation will be the first generation to grow up with humans and humanoids, robots, as they get introduced into home, either and schools. And we know that, certainly the AI LLMs aren't great at replicating human interactions yet, or even if they are, it'll be different.
I'll use them for it, yeah.
Cause a cultural shift that's going to be really significant across generations. And obviously, the lonelier society gets, the more plausible machine companionship becomes. I've seen tons of stories around that. Certainly younger generations now, using the LLMs and chatbots for companionship and talking and back, which, it's fine, but it's just interesting. Oh, and then of course the story of the week, Meta is reportedly building an AI clone of Mark Zuckerberg. Can you tell the difference?
That's dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, enterprise. This is an enterprise adoption, an AI clone of the founder. It isn't just marketing. It suggests a future where influence, leadership presence, and the public persona can be scaled indefinitely and globally without the person being present. Human impact is that authenticity gets harder to define when likeness, voice, and authority can be replicated on demand. People may soon be relating not to leaders, but to endlessly available synthetic avatars and performances of them.
Or the leaders we see on TV could be avatars, or the CEOs of corporations we see could be avatars.
Well, now they can be. Now I think that's what we'll see more and more. So when you see a video of Mark Zuckerberg, it may not be Mark Zuckerberg. It may be Mark Zuckerberg's avatar. And then you get the whole issue around authenticity.
The board could have kicked out Zuckerberg weeks before and was just doing that for public. It's a dangerous, slippery road, right? We could have a war going on and one government leader gets assassinated and no one ever knows. It just continuously gets put out. It's interesting.
I mean, when identity becomes a scalable product, that's really, and I've talked about that. I've consulted with Twin Protocol. They have some great stuff where you can put all your stuff in, it'll create an avatar of you and you can scale it. I mean, if an AI clone sounds like the person, acts like the person, and persuades like the person, what part of authenticity is actually left at the end of the day? I think that's a really interesting difference. That's just one example that's kind of the one that's stuck out the most, but there's a bunch of other stories where, companies are offering to build an AI powered version of you. It's like a status tool, a digital version of yourself to extend reach, availability, and output. The human impact is that people may increasingly feel pressure to produce machine readable versions of their judgment, style, and voice just to stay competitive. So let's say this is the first thing, it's like, okay, then we have the head of Google doing the same. We have the head of Intel, we have NVIDIA creating AI clones, right? So that every major corporation has their own AI avatar of their CEO. And you just don't know unless there's a little flashing thing in the bottom right-hand corner that says, this is AI.
Yeah.
You don't know if that's them or not.
Yeah.
Instead of Build-A-Bear, it's build an AI self,
Sure.
I mean, it's a real push, because I think what we'll see is this digital twin moving from novelty to expectation. I really do. Because the demands on any CEO, small or large, are enormous. Whether you're in a startup or mid-range or whatever, the CEO gets hammered with their time. And I think this could be a fast track for many, many to go, okay, I have to go to a conference in Orlando next week. I'm just going to send my avatar. And so, the avatar appears on stage, on the Zoom. It looks like a big thing, right? And then it can answer questions and do stuff.
Yeah.
And then it writes a report and sends it to the CEO. It says, I got some good ideas for new products from that conference that I went to.
I know for a fact this is happening already to some extent in digital correspondence, right? So more often than not, when you're emailing someone or you're texting someone in a corporate environment, I know for a fact that is occurring through intermediary models, and they're just getting a summary.
Well, there's a cartoon I saw. This on the one frame, it's got the person saying, "Oh my God, I took a few sentences and it created this amazing email that I sent off to the person." And the next frame is got the receiver going, "Oh, I've got this great AI. It took this really long email and just condensed it in one sentence for me." So it's like, really?
Right.
And then what you do is you take the people out of that, right?
My model talks to your model.
Yeah, I mean, there's a story popped up from generativeAInewsroom.com. Who knew? What builds trust in the use of AI in the news? Evidence from a large experiment. Basically, it says trust in journalism is already feeling fragile, and AI-generated or AI-assisted content is really changing how audiences are judging credibility, intention, and accountability. I think if people stop knowing who wrote what and how it was assembled and what value shaped it, the fabric around whether you can believe news or not, I mean, this is becoming a design problem, unfortunately. And it's I think, we've seen over the last definitely 10 years, newspapers, journalists get shrink down in terms of the number of people doing it, and yet they have more pressure to report and, look and review and send stuff out. And AI is becoming a real, an issue around news credibility. What I'm saying,
it's more of a credibility issue. Not less people are doing it because they don't want to be journalists. There's more citizen journalists than ever before. We just don't trust the news to let them be journalists and report what's actually going on without a government spin and that kind of thing. AI could actually really free us from a huge amount of propaganda if used correctly, or it could increase propaganda levels like never seen before. The latter is more likely.
Could be cultural. I mean, in China, what's happening there? The use of AI to have consistency around your messaging. In the US, enterprises want to be consistent in their messaging. They'll use that, but not at a national scale, maybe. You're right. I think AI persuasiveness around communication, it's like, we're getting more into this. Everything just becomes propaganda. Story popped up. Generation Alpha is turning to AI chatbots for TV recommendations, and I think this is the start of a trend that, it's like, I want TV recommendations. I'm not going to go to entertainment.com or whatever it is. Basically the AI on my TV or on my media box knows what I'm watching, and it knows when I watch, how I watch. Let it give me the recommendations. So what I'm saying is that AI is starting to become a cultural entertainment intermediary for children, right? And that really forms taste over time as part of the interface, right? And so early habits are going to get formed by AI.
Oh, and there's going to be like you and your friends are going to come up with TV shows and send episodes to each other soon, very soon.
Yeah.
Like we're thinking small. Like I have a 64 gigabyte headless server in my basement that I got to run a local video model on. That's insane. I can generate 5 seconds with my RAM, right?
Now,
it's a baby. It's just a baby.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine 15 quantizations later, whole different architecture. I'll be able to say, oh, this is a really cool, funny story about a dog that happens to look like my teacher that falls down the stairs. And I send it to my buddy, and he takes that video and expands it. And they're going to be using AI for everything.
well, I think, like I said, once consumers get that power, with the basis of some decent hardware to run, then we'll go back and we'll go, do you remember there were only 2 seasons of Firefly or whatever it was?
Let's finish it.
Let's just throw that into the AI and generate a 3rd season.
Yeah.
Now, if Hollywood was smart, instead of fighting that as copyright breaking, what they should do is set it up as a franchise, right? And Hollywood say, okay, you guys now have the power to create, season 3 of this old thing, Lost in Space, whatever it is, right? Tell you what, we'll put it into a marketplace, and we'll allow you to offer it, and we'll allow you to get, a certain percentage based on people using it and stuff. But if a lot of people use it, we'll hire you to do season 4 and season 5, right? And that way they can create an economic model, which instead of it feeling like we're pirating stuff and creating stuff on the sly, they can basically say, get ahead of the curve. And I think, because for me personally, there's TV series I've watched and I've gone, damn it, they canceled the damn thing. And I was really enjoying it, right? And I'm sure everyone listening here has a certain TV series they loved, but it's like, why did they only do 2 or 3 seasons? Yeah. And it's like, screw that, we'll create our own, right? And then we can share it. And then we can make money out of it, because maybe, I do a great version of season 3 and people think it's really good, but then you come in and you say, hey, that was really good. Do you mind if I do? Because I'm done with it. You say, hey, can I do the season after that based on that? Because it's really good, but I have some other ideas. I go for it. And so you give me, 50 cents, based off my season 3 creation, and you go off and create your own. And then, so we get royalties downstreaming.
Well, we'll see about that. Yeah, I'm with you.
But I think it makes it economically viable, but it also makes it fun for everyone to go, oh yeah, we've all got a great bunch of ideas, and now AI can make it look not like crap, because essentially we have a role model for the previous set of series that it can go, okay, yeah, right? Which is, instead of starting from ground zero and creating, AI slop, we can actually use previous models to kind of go tweak.
Everything you're talking about is already happening.
Yeah.
It's happening in different ways. It's not happening in video, but novels are being rewritten. There's a graphic novel coming out for Firefly very soon, or graphic animation series. All this is possible because you mentioned earlier the Honda model will have 1 trillion parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine when that's what comes after 1 trillion, quadrillion?
Yep, something like that, big number.
Soon. That's not, with the rate the technology moves, that's not unheard of. It'll be able to take an entire video game and keep it in its token cache, and then just generate you a new level. And it'll follow the storyline. It'll have the same characters. You could just take the whole season, upload every image, video second into the model, and say, just keep this going, and it will. So
it's a quadrillion after 1 trillion. Then you get a quintillion, a sextillion, a septillion, octillion, non and decillion. Anyway, big numbers. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think we need to look at AI and go, okay, it's like there's opportunities here to be massively creative on a global scale for all of us as individuals. And let's not outlaw it. Let's figure out ways where we can benefit in some ways, because, we have some great ideas. We can pop stuff and do that. Though there is backlash. A story popped up, comicbook.com. Major Crunchyroll isekai replaces the opening after it was confirmed AI was used in the opening. So there are people they're pushing back. So we don't want AI slop crap. You used AI in it, don't do it. But I think maybe the problem is they weren't upfront about it. They weren't transparent, Right? I think if they were transparent and said, we're going to do this because we think we can do some better things here and all this with an AI assistance, people going, then they would have gone, no, we really don't want that. And therefore they wouldn't have looked stupid because they would have gone, okay, fine, we'll do humans. Or the people might have said, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's good. Can we also contribute? So I think what's occurring is, the pushback on AI a lot of times is because it's not transparent. I think, when people use AI, they're now very, very shy about admitting they're using AI, right? Clearly not software programmers, but there are, in the creative, in the entertainment industry, there are probably a lot of people very shy. Certainly, though, we're seeing a bunch of stories coming up with musicians admitting, you bet, AI knows me better than I know myself, and it's really helped me to develop better songs, right? So that's different, obviously transparent. So I think, we have to get transparency now. And I think it has to just be obvious that AI is everywhere. So everyone's going to use it no matter what. The story, musicians in the machine, platforms and AI are reshaping creativity. Obviously, music's one of the clearest spaces where human identity, livelihood, and creativity intersect. And AI is now not just giving musicians new tools, it's changing platform economics, production workflows, and the social meaning of creative work. And the human impact is that artists may feel both empowered and displaced at the same time. Creativity is now becoming more scalable while artistic identity becomes less secure. And I think that's just from a lack of infrastructure, systems, and frameworks. I think, I've got a friend who's doing a whole bunch of stuff using AI to help with licensing, right? So it can get clear on who owns what and people can get paid and royalties, which is a great application. And I think the lack of frameworks is making artists feel really insecure. People relied on copyright and trademark as ways of securing identity and making sure they get paid for their work, right? We haven't, with AI just kind of exploding cataclysmically onto the screen, we haven't had that ability to do that. And I think now what we're starting to see, at least definitely in the music world, a lot of stuff is starting to get put in place, I think, to start that, but it's still got a fair amount way to go. It's the whole area of creativity is really interesting when it comes to AI and the balance between the two and how it can be one of collaboration. Meanwhile, on the farm, story out of Fortune, my Bible. After growing up on a dairy farm, this Peter Thiel-backed founder is using AI to save cattle ranching. And actually, my daughter's doing animal science.
You were saying that, yeah.
At college. And I've been sending her stories where AI is being used with sheep, with farming. They're using it with drones in agriculture, not only for, diagnosing and looking at, what needs to be done where, but delivery of targeted, safe, laser weed killer things, zapping them away. Pew pew. So I think if there's any industry that's going to benefit really significantly and then in turn benefit the rest of us, agriculture. Yeah. Lots of stuff happening in agriculture, and the Department of Agriculture here in the US also did some announcements on AI as well. And then, of course, the other industry, healthcare. I don't know if it's going to solve anytime soon the issue we have without having a nationalized healthcare system here. But, people are trying to apply it and do things. Certainly emergency care, number of stories popping up with AI being used to optimize and support better emergency care, triage, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Also, chatbots to explain to humans, and in a clear way, versus all the medical garble technology language they can tend to use, to basically tell you in simple terms, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and what's the outcome, and what you should look for. I mean, the number of times, you can go to a doctor and you come out going, I'm not sure I understood all that, but okay, I trust the doctor. Hopefully that's good. Now at least we'll have chatbots to explain some of this stuff to us. That would be really nice. And then the other piece that you and I've talked about, AI agents are acting like employees, but company structures still treat them like software. Ryan's demonstration of spinning up AI employees, very powerful. And then I mentioned Microsoft's coming out with something similar. We working in industries and that, and I think we'll start to see, either these AI employees or more pervasively, humanoid robots being evolved, certainly on, production lines and so on. Lots of work I keep seeing stories around that getting implemented a lot in Europe and in Southeast Asia. I think at some point, we'll just have to get used to AI peers working on different stuff that we'll have to send stuff to.
Sure.
Meanwhile, our CEO is an AI avatar, can AI run a business?
That's what Jensen Huang was talking about with NVIDIA, right? He seems to think so. He seems to think he could run video.
Yeah. But CEOs, obviously it's about governance, it's about delegation. I think it's interesting how much a business is willing to hand over to AI. That seems to be the question. How much are we as humans willing to hand over, whether personally or commercially, enterprise-wide?
Right.
It
could be everything, man. It's just we have to ramp up to that. Right now I'm willing to give up my database administration. Okay, cool. Right then I'm willing to search this, and then I can do this too, and I'll slowly do that, and then eventually I think this is going to turn more into like owning cattle when it comes to companies, and I don't mean that in the sense of like the people there will be treated as cattle. There probably won't be people there to begin with at all. I think it would be more along the lines of like, I have this company that manufactures this thing, and those are just my resources that take care of it. There's robots working there. There's AI managing it. There's, autonomous trucks shipping it, that kind of thing.
Well, the whole department, human resources, right? That humans are resources.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll, corporate resources, maybe human and AI resources. Story out of the Wall Street Journal, the CEO's new imperative, transforming to a human-led AI-powered workforce. That's stage one. Human-led and AI-powered. And yet, multiple stories pushing of Gen Z and other generations pushing back, either clearly going, no, I'm not going to do that, or basically passively sabotaging AI in the workforce. We're seeing lots of that. And clearly it's bubbling up to the CEO level now going, I want everyone in my company to use AI because it makes us faster, more efficient, smarter in many different ways. But how do I do that? How do CEOs lead on that?
So I know we've got 3 minutes left, but I have a friend who works at a government facility, not a pseudo-government contractor, and they're pushing AI like no other. And simultaneously, they're pushing security like no other. So they're saying you can't give anything valuable to this AI. And no, it can't look at any of these documents. And no, it can't do any of the things you would need an AI to actually work on. But if you don't use AI, you're in super trouble. And it's just comical. Like, we were laughing about it last night. He's like, what do you want me to do? Just sit there and tell it my feelings throughout the day? Like, I can't load our files into it. I can't have it scan this. I can't. And yeah, slowly, right? We have to work out the security issues like you've discussed for individual companies. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, if I start a company right now that says I'm going to bring a server to your company, plug it in the basement, and we're going to plug all your users into your AI, that would sell.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how, this frictionless AI is just transferring across everything, but impacting so many different levels, whether it's social at work, whether it's enterprise, whether it's sovereign AI, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's my electricity bill going through the roof, or now I'm going to use AI to buy property or sell property. It's like AI everywhere all at once,
Yes,
all the time. And it's no wonder it's a fatigue. So let me close up. I want to thank everyone today for watching. A lot of top news pushing through this week. Again, it's not just technology anymore. It's really about infrastructure. I think what this week's AI news really showed is that AI is no longer a technology story sitting neat inside the tech sector. It's really a civilization story. Across the headlines, we saw power consolidating through geopolitics and regulations. We saw infrastructure straining under the burden of compute and energy. We saw belief itself being reshaped by systems that influence trust, identity, and emotional attachment, and execution quietly shifting from human choice to machine-managed workflows. The deeper point is that this is not about shiny tools or speculative hype or even product gossip. It's about the hidden rails of power, belief, control, trust, and machine-mediated value that are quietly reorganizing how our institutions, economies, and daily lives work. And I think what stays with me most is how human all of this really is, because behind every story about agents or sovereign cloud or AI companions, medical automation, or even commerce is the same question. What kind of people are we becoming as we hand more thought, more trust, and more action to systems we didn't not fully evolve to understand? I think the hopeful part is that people still really care about truth, authorship, care, trust, and human presence, which means the future's really still open. So the real work now is to stay conscious, ethical, and awake, to watch the transfer of agency and not just the breakthrough, and to really remember that the future is not something happening to us. It's something we're rehearsing line by line, choice by choice, system by system. As I said, we're not predicting the future. We're all debugging this together. Thank you very much, Achilles, Dapit. Thanks to everyone listening today. And we'll see you this same time next week and talk then. So stick around, stay safe, and come back. Thanks for everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.